taking setbacks and turning them into fuel. I've always said turning setbacks into success, but I think more importantly, it's taking your setbacks and turning them into fuel, because fuel propels. When people read the book, they'll understand the journey that I've been on. But I think more importantly, they'll have some tools to say, okay, how do I turn what I'm dealing with right now into fuel to propel me?
On cam ready in 3, 2, 1. This is Unknown to Known, an on-cam ready presentation. I'm Jamie Maglietta. Thanks so much for being here with us. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Each week, we pour into you by offering mindset advice and tips on how to go from unknown to known within your industry, your niche, or nationally. I tap my network of television personalities, YouTubers, authors, speakers to help you level up in your own way. So if you're with us and you love what we're offering, be sure to subscribe or like this video and leave a review. I also offer a green room pep talk. Some of my guests and myself, we talk directly to you, offering words of wisdom. Today we are going to talk about the fuel that can help ignite your journey from unknown to known in whatever industry or space that you're in. And John Ulsh is a great guest for this. I first saw John speak less than a year ago, and I was moved by his story and the organic attention he got following his recovery. If you've ever felt like, I don't know, the world is against you, or you can't overcome a huge challenge, this book is for you. When I heard John speak, I was just coming out of my own funk. I had been dealing with chronic pain and a new additional issue, which is this migraine that won't go away. I had 2 spine surgeries and was at my lowest when I heard John speak. And I was moved. You know, he's talking about falling in love with the process, and I thought, I need to just keep going. I had been on the fence of whether or not to put myself out there, to start my own business, to finally write a course that I just released. It's coming out, guys. Join the waitlist on camready.com. And when I heard him and these other speakers at this event, two of them will also be guests on this podcast, I was inspired. So I thought he would be a great guest to bring to you. His book is very detailed into his journey following a horrific car accident. He starts our conversation explaining that. I definitely cut him off though, because you can't get all the details here. You need to read the book for the full story. And I did that because I really want to make sure that this isn't the last time you think of John Ulsh. You can find him on social media. All the links to him, again, are in the description. And his book is in my Amazon storefront. Again, he is a speaker and he's reigniting his speaking tour. So be sure to check him out and consider him for your own audience. But in our conversation, I make sure to address your needs. The journey from unknown to known is challenging, and he's on it right now. He just launched his first official book here. And I made sure to ask him, how does it feel? What are you doing? What are the challenges? What about social media, right? We always talk about social media here. And to have a little fun, the viewer questions came from people from his area, because this is where it gets very small world. John is from a town near my husband's childhood town. So my husband grew up with people he works with, he knows. We have very similar contacts. And that just, to me, made it feel like I was meant to hear him speak and I was meant to have him on this show. And I hope that when you listen to this conversation, you feel that you were meant to listen to Unknown to Known today. Here's my conversation with John Ulsh. John, your life went from real estate success and to an athletic discipline to surviving a catastrophic accident and rebuilding from the ground up. Why don't you just tell our audience a little bit more about what you went through?
Okay, I'll try to keep it short, but it's a long journey. So,
Hmm.
on December 1st of 2007, we were at a swim meet for our 8-year-old daughter, Katie. It was in James Buchanan, Pennsylvania. I live in central Pennsylvania. It was about an hour south of where I live. And meet was in the morning, and we took our 4-year-old son along with us, and basically bribed him that if he behaved himself at the swim meet, we would go cut a Christmas tree down afterwards. And so the meet was over, and it was already like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were driving back home, and on a 2-lane undivided highway, kind of very rural area, and on a straightaway, a car coming the other direction crossed the center line, and we went driver to driver. There were no skid marks on the road, so the police estimated the impact speed to be 125 miles an hour. They had us doing 55 and him doing 70. He died instantly there. um, my wife was in the front passenger seat. She was unconscious, broken ribs, broken hand, broken foot. My son, who was 4, James, was sitting in a car seat behind me, and my seat came back into him and broke his fibula and tibia in his left leg. And they would later realize that his lap belt from his booster seat or seat belt didn't cut his skin, but severed his small intestines. Our daughter Katie was 8. She was in the back seat. She was the only one who was conscious. She was the first people on the scene of the accident itself was somebody who lived up the street who was visiting his mother, and came down and found her actually crawling between the seat, crying, "Daddy, don't die." I took the blunt of the impact. The energy came up my left leg, shattered my pelvis, then broke my tailbone long ways, and then my L1 through L4, so my lower vertebrae
Hmm.
were all
Yeah.
fractured. My spleen had ruptured. My diaphragm had ruptured, and when my diaphragm ruptured, my left lung completely collapsed. My right lung partially collapsed. I was basically bleeding to death from the internal injuries. The engine block itself had collapsed down onto my feet, so I'm 6'2", and car did what it was supposed to do, but my feet were stuck under the engine block. So when they were pulling me out, they actually pulled me out of my shoes. So my left foot was shattered from the engine block smashing it. My son James and I were flown to Penn State Medical Center, which is in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So the university is up in State College, but Penn State's hospital is in Hershey, which is right next to Harrisburg. Fortunately for our family, this little town of Carlisle, where we live, Penn State keeps a second helicopter there. They're called Lifeline because Penn State's in the Nittany Lion, and their helicopters are called Lifelines. And fortunately, that Lifeline helicopter was here, and it's here for the sole purpose of reaching down into that part of Pennsylvania that is very rural. Because we were closer to actually the University of Maryland's trauma hospital in Baltimore, but I wouldn't have survived if they had to wait for that transport. My wife and my daughter were transported to Hagerstown Hospital in Maryland, which was the closest non-trauma hospital. We were right at the Maryland border in Pennsylvania when this happened. And so she and my daughter were put into a ambulance that evening and transported to Hershey because I was going to die, and they
Wow.
and my wife to be at my side. So I would spend the next 18 days in a coma. Our son, when they realized they set his leg before they ever realized his bowel was ruptured. He
Hmm.
started growing up and realized he was septic. And so they then rushed him into surgery. He spent 15 days in the hospital. Um, our daughter, when she was transported to Hershey with her mother, again, we were talking a little off air here that my wife's story, my kid's story is very different than my story. My story is what I went through. My wife had to travel broken in an ambulance with a scared 8-year-old who had been conscious the entire time, knowing that they were going there because I was going to die, but starting to try to build some confidence in my daughter that everything was going to be okay. When they got there, my daughter refused to go into the pediatric ward. So my father took custody of her, and he and my daughter slept in my wife's bedroom that night, so that her hospital room, so that she would not be away from her mom because she was scared. She would
Because
go
she
home.
was I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
because she was the only one who wasn't severely injured, did they ever say how she
Yeah.
kinda walked away?
Again, So the impact was driver to driver. She was in the back passenger seat, so she was about as far away from the impact. Her injuries were broken collarbone from the shoulder strap, right? Literal laceration cut from the lap belt, which again is very common for these types of accidents, and a bunch of cuts from glass shattering around her. Again, the car did what it was supposed to do. She was the farthest from the actual impact. Um, what we know
Wow.
today versus what we knew back then is we now know that the seatbelt did its job. The airbags did their job. My injuries, all my internal injuries, weren't actually related to like the steering wheel coming into my chest. It was actually from the vibrations of 125-mile impact speed. And
Wow.
we know this now because unfortunately, soldiers don't need to be right next to an explosive to be killed.
Mm.
All my hollow organs were ruptured. So my spleen ruptured, my diaphragm ruptured. We later learned my heart was damaged. At one time, I was the only person they knew in the world with what they call a traumatic VSD, a hole between the right and left ventricle, like a child would be born with.
Mhm.
But mine was caused by heart tissue dying over time. And the only reason at the time that was the only person is because I should have died from a lot of other things. And so, you know, this hole opened up somewhere between 6 months and 9 months after the actual accident itself. But today, unfortunately, there are people who have these, and it's literally because of the fact that, you know, they were around an explosion, and the vibration from that explosion ruptures hollow organs. So like my liver, which is solid, was fine, but the other organs inside my body were all damaged. So
Mm.
yeah, I spent 18 days in a coma. I came out of a coma paralyzed. Um, the blessing for me was I came out of the coma, and the first thing I asked my nurse was, is my family okay?"
Mhm.
And you know, by that time they were all back at the house. They were home. So my son came out a few days before I came out of the coma. So they were all going to be okay. I knew that. My second question was probably, um, you know, was it my fault?
Yeah.
By day 18,
Yeah.
the police reports were final. Everything was done. The investigations were done. It was determined he was not under drugs or alcohol, but he was distracted. He was on a cell phone, actually, talking to his fiance, and we just know because she heard it. She had a 2-month-old baby together, and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And so I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't me. I knew it was a freak accident, and probably the third thing was, my God, I can't move my legs. It
Mm.
took me probably 2 days to realize I was paralyzed from the waist down because still hooked up the monitors, I mean, excruciating pain, a lot of narcotics to deal with even being out of the coma and dealing with pain. So it took it. These weren't all instant realizations. It took a couple of days of just kind of coming to terms, with where my situation was. Um, it was
Mm.
Christmas, so I came out of the coma on December 18th, and you know, less than a week later, they moved me to a nursing home. I couldn't go to the rehab because of my pelvis and my back being shattered. I was non-weight bearing for another 8 weeks, which meant I couldn't be raised more than 15 degrees. And my wife couldn't have taken me at home. The kids were still injured. She was injured. We don't have a setup that would have worked very well. So
Mhm.
family decided to move me to a nursing home where I would spend 8 more weeks before I could start to go to outpatient or inpatient rehab. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I was a 37-year-old living in a nursing home.
Yeah.
That got through Christmas. That was the dark time. I mean, it was the worst because I was no longer hooked up to IVs for narcotics. I was taking oral narcotics. Um, I couldn't be moved, excruciating pain, bed sores. You know, I always jokingly say sponge baths are overrated.
Mhm.
They don't sound as they're not as good as they sound. Talk about
Oh,
humility
yeah.
and humbling. You're literally, I'm paralyzed. I can't feed myself.
Mhm.
Can't brush my teeth. I can't because I'm laying flat. The only way I could be moved is they roll me to my side to change the sheets on a bedpan, roll me back. Otherwise, I just laid there staring at a green thumbtack, holding up a picture that my kids drew for me, but To this day, I don't know what the picture was, but I know the thumbtack was green because I would stare at it for hours just waiting for narcotics to come again. But eventually I got out there and started rehab. And I live in a house that wasn't handicap accessible. It didn't have a first floor bedroom on it. And so the only way I could really come home to my house was going to be able to come up with a way to get up and down 15 stairs. And for whatever reason, I'd been a marathon runner before the accident happened. So it actually ran 12 miles that morning. So it saved me when my lung collapsed because I was functioning on half a lung for more than an hour.
Wow.
I was less than 10% body fat. So they didn't have to, when they cut me open from sternum to pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have all this visceral fat that they had to work through, which again
Mm-hmm.
helped. And so when I was in the nursing home laying flat on my back, I had them tie stretchy bands, like exercise bands, to the rails on my bed for the sole purpose of if I'm going to be in a wheelchair, which is where my life was going, I was going to be able to at least push myself in a wheelchair. I was going to be strong enough to, lift myself out of it. And so when I got to rehab, turned out that that made a huge difference for me because I couldn't use my left leg at all. By the time I got to rehab, I had gained some use of my right leg. Again, most of that damage when the energy came up was on the left side. And so to this day, it's a lot of nerve damage that's there. And I can only feel my big toe, which is the only reason I can even walk today is because you need your big toe. The rest of them, I can't feel. But yeah, I got into rehab and got out in less than 7 days.
Wow.
Supposed to be there for months. Now I
That's
came home on a Saturday
impressive.
and had dinner, sat around on to Sunday, and Monday I started outpatient rehab. Then I'd spend the next 2.5 years there. You know, by that, at the end of that 2.5 year period, um, I had already had 28 surgeries at that point. Surgeries to go back to repair things. I had no abdominal muscles. They couldn't close my abdominal muscles when the accident happened. So I had to go back later and have that done. That's when they found the hole in my heart. That
Mm-hmm.
stopped everything for about 2 months. The cardiologist decided, was it going to get bigger? What would happen when they went in to do the surgery to reattach my abdominal muscles?
And
That,
let
yeah,
me interrupt because you guys might be listening to this and thinking this is an incredible story. You need to get his book, okay? The Upside of Down. And that's where you can learn more about this journey that he went on following this accident and all the steps that he had to go through to become who he is now. And I think, this writing process must have been really, I mean, I would imagine kind of helpful for you to
yeah,
go through and reflect back, but I'd love to hear more about what it was like to think back on this time and kind of use that to help others, which is your mission through this book.
yeah. So, when I, so I'm 2.5 years out and I'm taking 90 milligrams of morphine twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
This is before the full narcotic epidemic. And there was no pain specialist telling me I shouldn't be on it. I mean, I was still dealing with chronic pain, still going into surgeries. But, you know, I realized that because of the narcotics, I was forgetting stuff.
Mm.
I went to a friend's wedding and I see the pictures. I see the pictures on the wall of me there. Like they had everyone signed a picture with, I have no memory of it whatsoever. Uh, and so I started writing. You're right. You know, therapy wasn't something I really did afterwards. I tried it a little bit. I didn't probably have a great therapist at the time either. It didn't help probably. And like, you should be more upset. And I'm like, I'm not. So, I'm just going to keep rehabbing and keep getting better and getting better. Like, well, you should be more upset about the fact that, somebody did this to you. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not. So,
Mm.
I quit the therapy and didn't really stay with it. And so, yeah, writing was both therapeutic to work through things. Secondly, it was a chance for me to write down. Like I had a ton of hallucinations when I came out of my coma.
Yeah. There's some great details in the
Yeah,
book.
there's some weird like some,
Where I was like,
I had
wait, is this real or is he
yeah,
hallucinating?
I had an out of body experience, which I still to this day don't know, other than the fact that when I went back to the hospital the first time, I literally said to my wife, that's where my room was. And she's like, it
Wow.
was, that's so weird. Because I was laying flat on my back. I never looked out a window. And it was a construction site there. That was the
So
first time I
wild.
even told anybody, and it was her that I had that experience. But yeah, the book became very therapeutic, but it was also, you know, a memoir to my kids. They were 8 and 4 at the time, and
Hmm.
they didn't understand what happened, but they understood that their father wasn't the same person.
Hmm.
And so it became sort of that rebuilding process. And it came at the right time for me to start doing it because it happened at exactly the same time that I quit outpatient rehab on my own. I basically went in and said, look, I can do better than this, that you're willing to push me. I was a marathon runner. I was a college athlete. I will push myself harder than you're willing to do it.
Wow.
And, the trigger to all that was literally the day before my now daughter, now 10, was out juggling a soccer ball and comes inside, and I'm sitting here where we are right now. And she's crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, I miss my old daddy, the one who I
Hmm.
played with. And I was like, you know, that was probably the,
Yeah.
the most painful thing that I went through because, you know, I believed on some level that I was
Hmm.
survived a 3% chance of survival. So my kids would have a child or have a dad. And,
Hmm.
they wouldn't be without a father. And here I was being called out for not doing the one thing
Yeah.
I
You
said I
know,
would do.
I didn't have a severe car accident, but I had a very unexpected spine surgery. And those who know me through this podcast know that it was unexpected and I wound up in chronic pain that just never went away following it as well. So it was like that pain for years that kind of holds you back from being your full self. And then even worse after the surgery, where I feel like I lost a year and a half of my life because it was two back to back surgeries. So when you went back and you started to look at all you had happen to you and your family, do you ever have that feeling of like, I'm on a mission to kind of make up for lost time? I want others to hear my story. Like, what is the driving force behind you moving forward?
Yeah. So I guess it's, the driving force now. So my kids are now 22. My son is a senior in a senior year at Villanova. Our daughter's 26. She just left Denver and moved back to central Pennsylvania after 5 years. They're, you know, on their way to being adult. I think through all this time, our family's goal was always like, let's try to find the positive in something,
Hmm.
in the setback, and turn it into something that we could use for, I mean, my new phrase is fuel, you know, setbacks into fuel. It used to
Hmm.
be setbacks into success. And actually that's the name of the subtitle of my book. But the more I've been speaking again a lot, the more I've been, writing a lot more, it really is turning a setback into fuel, right? Like, right. The concept isn't so much the success. It's like, all right, the setback's going to happen. Let's turn it into something that propels us in the right direction. I've had 45 surgeries. I haven't gone a year without one. This year could be the year. My last surgery was last October. So
Praying for that.
literally about a year ago, but the setbacks continue to come and but now, it's always been, okay, one, can you give yourself a little bit of grace? Because
Hmm.
the setbacks, if, when after you had your surgery, you're like, do I really want to I got to take time off. I can't exercise. I have to stay in traction. I can't do these podcasts. Like there's all these things. And like, you know, the momentum gets cut from underneath you. And then you're like, how do I start up again? And
Hmm.
sometimes I wouldn't start up for a year or longer because I was frustrated, a little bit angry probably. And on some level, like, you know what? I'm alive.
Hmm.
That's more
Hmm.
than anyone thought I'd be. So let's just sit in that for a little bit. But I always eventually come back to be like, okay, this is what I got to do. I've got to,
Yeah.
I'm ready now to do it, and I'll push.
Do you have like a visualization? Some people use vision boards. How do you keep seeing where to go essentially?
So ironically, one of the big shifts in my life came to started working on my own with the YMCA. I just went to my local YMCA, just down the street at 10 a.m. And I just so happened that United Cerebral Palsy had a program there for kids with special needs, mostly Down syndrome, who would work out. These people would become my workout partners for the next year. And I think what I learned more than anything from them, and to this day, great people. Now they're in their 30s now. They were like teenagers when I started this journey with them, is that, falling in love with the process and taking things in small bite-sized increments is the secret to just about any success. And so it's always been this idea of, okay, big pictures are great, but they were often frustrating. And oftentimes when I achieved them anyway, I felt somewhat disappointed because I now just spent a year trying to recover from this. And now I've achieved what I said I was going to do. I was going to go run a turkey trot on Thanksgiving Day. I was never going to run it faster than I did the 3 days before the car accident. But I said, I'm going to do it. And I did it. I did it in 12 minutes. I did it like under 7 minutes the year before the accident. But I was really disappointed because I trained and worked and tried to figure out step by step, baby steps, and reach this goal. And so now
That's in the book, right?
Yeah.
I remember reading this. Yeah.
And now I just focus on small wins all the time. And, I just move the finish line or I move the goalpost farther away constantly. So I feel like for me, a vision board isn't something that I need. A vision board is, has its benefit for those people who need that. For me, I can't think that far out. I mean,
it seems like you're taking it as it comes and kind of creating your vision as you're going.
Daily wins. I take daily wins. Constantly. And, some days are really, really good. Some days aren't. And that was my rehab. Like, if I got, I'm still a numbers guy. I still handwrite every single one of my workouts. Sitting over there on that shelf is 18.
It's so much more effective, isn't it?
Yeah. I can go pull a book that was my workout routine 14 years ago and see what I was doing. So I like to go back and see things. And my office is surrounded with what I call, wins, a Lifeline helicopter photo, medals from Spartan races that I was later sponsored to do. These are things just to remind me of how far I did come, because, we get tied up in wanting to get someplace and forget, actually what we've accomplished.
I'm going to take a pause from this conversation to let you know about Riverside. I use Riverside as my podcasting platform, and I also use it as my content creation studio for all my YouTube channel videos, and I'm starting to use it for more of my short content as well. So, if you are looking for a podcasting platform that can do way more than any other platform I've experienced, consider Riverside. It's releasing new editing features where you can edit everything inside the portal before you even export it to Spotify or YouTube or whatever platform you need your podcast to go out to. What I love about Riverside is they also have a really great customer service. So anytime I have questions, they're available to me. If you're interested in trying Riverside, I have a discount code. Check it out in the description. Now back to the conversation. You've been taking this approach on social media where you're kind of referring to these items around your home. And I had a recent thing happen to me where I was like, this great thing happened before something bad happened, and the bad thing overshadowed this good thing. And now I need that good thing to remind me of I've come a long way. I've come far. And you are already kind of taking that approach with connecting with your audience. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your strategy with how you're showing up on social media?
Yeah.
Following all this?
Yeah. So, again, with the, so the book itself is 2 parts. And so you've had a chance to read the original manuscripts. Part 1 was the memoir of our family story, written 14 years ago. Part 2 is 8 pillars for coming back from setbacks. And so, every one of I had 14 at one point, more down to 8. And these were all things that I was doing. We just didn't give them a name. Like we didn't call them something, but I was doing it the whole time. And so, when we're talking about, celebrating wins. Um, it's I like to think of it as, because again, I would get disappointed in myself when I achieved something that I set out to do because I didn't have it the next day to do.
Hmm.
So I never consider myself done
Yeah.
or finished. But, you know, everything that I surround myself with is a memory of something that when I see it and I think about it, triggers me to remember where I was and where I am. My grandfathers, who were very vital in my life, who are no longer with us, and their photos are behind me, things I did with them as a kid that I've gone back now and so, like, you know what? That means a lot to me. My football from that was given to me by my coach my senior year of high school sits up on the shelf for years in a box just somewhere, right? A piece of art. Like I have a background in fine arts as well, and
Wow.
I can appreciate an artist. My daughter is a professional photographer who went to Savannah College of Art and Design in Hong Kong, and I can appreciate artists a lot. So a lot of times I'm like, all right, I'm going to go buy a piece of art that
Hmm.
you might look at and say it's beautiful on the wall, but I look at it and remember something related to the car accident or related to, an opportunity to speak in
Hmm.
Colorado.
Hmm.
And so I think having, go back to that vision board concept. I guess my whole office, in fact, is a
Is your
big
vision.
it's board, but it's more of a reminder than it is where I want to go. It's more of a reminder of where I've been.
It's funny that you say that because I'm staring at mine. So
Mm-hmm.
I have what you have behind you in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's little momentums from, accomplishments, things, press passes. And it's a constant reminder of like, you've been somewhere, you need to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have stories to tell, right? And I think that's important. And it's also a good way to connect with your audience. You're also in real estate. I'm assuming you're still active.
Um, my team would say I'm less active than I should be right now with the book, but yes, I run a real estate team. I've got fantastic people with me. That's been a blessing. That's been a blessing ever since the accident. Like, I
He
mean,
was working in the hospital.
yeah, yeah. Advocacy is huge. Having advocates,
Hmm.
people you trust, is a huge part because the reality is, driven people. You're a driven person. Um, it's really easy to ask for help when you know that if somebody doesn't take care of something,
Hmm.
you can go do it. You can be
Yeah.
like to your husband, take the trash out. If he doesn't take the trash out, you can still roll it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very different situation when you're paralyzed in a bed
Hmm.
and you can't do anything for yourself. And you're a very driven person. And I'm a person who now knows he gets a lot of his self-worth from being important to other people. Like, I'm in therapy finally for the last couple of years to work through some PTSD from the accident. And what I know is I get my self-worth from being important to other people. And when I was paralyzed, I could do nothing for myself. It's nails on a chalkboard for me to have people have to take care of me constantly.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, having advocates, having people that are there for you is probably, you know, the single greatest reason to succeed because we can't do it all on our own as much as we want to. I still call it my board of directors. They're doctors, they're therapists, they're priests. They're people who literally know that I can call them, and if I'm calling them, I probably have something I need to work through,
Mm.
and they know it. I'm very clear about it. Like, you're on the board. If I'm calling you, are you willing to get back to me in the next 24 hours so I can work through something? That's a big step that I had to take early on. I've gotten rid of doctors, but I've added doctors that believe in me. So if a
Hmm.
doctor would say, hey, you should just be happy to be alive. Why do you want to keep pushing yourself to try to walk? Get rid of that doctor and
Hmm.
find one that says, I don't have anybody else like you, but I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. But speaking about that team around you, one thing I do want to say that John and I have talked about off camera is that my family, my husband's family, is from the Carlisle, Newville area of Pennsylvania. So we actually had a ton of mutual relationships with different contacts in the area. And I had a few send in questions for this podcast. So let's get to those. Here's
All
the
right.
first one. You may be familiar.
Hey, John, it's Brittany Giles from Keller Williams of Central PA. Congratulations on publishing your long awaited book, Upside of Down. We know that you've been working on this for a long time. And that actually brings me to my first question is, we know that you started writing this book years ago and you finally picked it back up. Why now? Our second question for you is, what does success look like for you? We know that you plan on traveling, doing keynote speaking, as well as just the impact from your story alone that you're sharing in your book. But how do you know that you have made an impact, and how will you define its success? Thanks so much for having me, and we wish you the absolute best of luck, John.
So go for it.
This.
What'd you say?
This is fun. I like this.
Okay, good.
So, so first of all, Brittany's an adamant reader. Like, she reads a ton. She's constantly posting on social books that she's reading. So, and she read a really rough early edition before it was really edited. But yeah, so a combination of two things. One, I had this original manuscript from 14 years ago. Two, I had spent the last 2 years relaunching my speaking, right? So out of that came this concept of wanting to not travel as much to keynote, but do more retreat and more coaching. And so I started giving what is now the second part of this book, these pillars, these concepts of what I did to overcome my adversities. And I had a couple options last October, a year ago, to publish my original manuscript. And a couple of the publicists I talked to, like, it'd be great if you wrote a second part. Your manuscript's 32,000 words. The sweet spot is 50,000 words. And I'm like, I don't know if I have it in me, but I was continuing to build out these 8 pillars. And then in January so you live in Atlanta, right? So
Yes.
if you remember January, beginning of this year, freezing cold, I was outside of Hilton Head, South Carolina for a month. It snowed, and then it didn't go away. And so I had got on a Zoom call with the publisher I was leaning towards. And she said something that struck me. She said, John, why are you being selfish? I'm like, okay, you got me. What are you saying? She goes, I read your first part of your manuscript. I didn't have to. I wanted to, and I read it in one sitting. Your story is incredible. There's people who need to hear your story, because a lot of people are in a spot that need to understand that they can get out of where they are and go forward. And by you choosing to not publish your book, you're keeping it from people.
Yeah.
Now, she's also a publisher, but she got me, and I'm like, fine. I'm like, she goes, it would be great. She had already known. She's heard me speak. She saw videos of me speaking, and she's like, it'd be great if you just added, like, I'm not going to make you rewrite your book. What if you wrote a part 2? What if you wrote a second part about using your memoir and using what you speak about, these 8 pillars that you talked about? I'm like, okay, send the contract again. She sent it to me in October. I never signed it. So send it to me again. I'll sign it. I sign it then. The snowstorm comes, and I proceed to sit in my house in front of a fireplace in South Carolina in January. And I wrote 20, just shy of 22,000 words in 7 days. So I took 2.5 years to write the first, 31,000 words. And I sat there. Now I had it all in my head. I'd given this talk a bunch of times. Like, I knew how to do it. But yeah, I literally sat there with 2 bottles of bourbon over 1 week. And that was my Ernest Hemingway moment in a snowstorm in South Carolina. And wrote it. And so to this day, I couldn't have written what I wrote even 5 years ago. Like, even 5 years ago, I hadn't had enough setbacks. I hadn't had enough understanding. Again, patience, being in the right place, being prepared. I mean, my first pillar is commitment. And the reality is that, people can tell us that we should do something, and we could say we feel like we want to do it, but we're not actually truly committed. You know,
Mhm.
there's, health related things that everyone knows they should, like smoking or being obese and having diabetes. These are all things that are behavioral related stuff, but you're not ready. And so I wasn't ready. I couldn't have written the book. And then when I felt I was ready, in my typical fashion, it was then, pedal to the metal, go as hard as you can. But, that
Mhm.
used to be my life all the time. And, getting paralyzed and being stuck in a hospital bed will teach you patience if it'll
Yeah.
teach you nothing else. But so I've learned to be patient until the moment comes that it's time. But when it's time, I still do everything at top speed and as focused as I always have been. I can just sit quietly. So to answer Brittany's second question, I did a post, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I was in church, and the pastor told a story about this man walking onto a beach and seeing this young kid picking up all these starfish. The beach was just covered in starfish. They had washed up onto the beach. And the man thought, I'm going to teach this kid a lesson. He goes down, and the kid reaches down, he picks up a starfish, throws it in the water, picks up another one, throws it back in the water. Beach is covered in them. The guy's like, do you think that what you're doing is going to make a difference?
Mm.
Kid doesn't say anything. Kid leans down, picks up another starfish, throws in the water, looks at the guy and says, so that one it did.
Mhm.
If one person reads my book, and because they read my book, we made a change in their lives to the positive, I guess it was worth it all.
Yeah.
I'd love to put it in as many people's hands as possible, but I've spoken in front of 50 plus crowds at this point, done podcasts, wrote a book now. If the very least, if one person was able to take what we went through and change their trajectory of their life, then it would have been worth it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
that,
can get that. That would be your success
yeah,
to her question, yeah.
to have thousands of people have their lives changed would be
Yeah.
the biggest blessing in the world. But I gotta be like that kid and kind of be
Mhm.
like, well, it made a difference to that one person. So I guess
Mhm.
it's, you know,
And, you're a very mission-driven thought leader. It's hard to not want to impact others' lives with your story. I mean, that's why you're putting it out into the world. And, I want to talk about your frameworks at some point. I want to make sure we get to those. Before we get there, I have another question that came in from someone that you work with their company. You may have answered this question in our conversation, so just take it in any direction you want to go in. Let me get to that.
Hi, John. It's Amanda Roberts with ServPro of Shippensburg, Perry County. And our question for you is, in what ways have you expanded your brand beyond your real estate business? Thank you.
So Amanda works with Jason Roberts, ServPro. Again, we know them.
yeah.
So what's your answer here?
So my brand the first time,
Mhm.
when after the accident was very organic, very like opportunity would come and I would take advantage of the opportunity. I never set out to be in Men's Fitness magazine. Someone saw my story because I had raised money for our local YMCA. Like it was just a very organic
Mhm.
social. Facebook existed, but that was about it. Magazines were still a thing. We were talking earlier, I'll speak sometimes to people under the age of 25 and I'll be like, yeah, used to walk into a grocery store and there was a whole aisle of magazines, right? And
Mhm.
go through and actually spend like 15 minutes walking down there, go out, read that one, now we just do that online. Uh, so, initially it was just like an opportunity would come. Someone would hear me speak at a chamber of commerce and say, I'd need you to come speak at our company. Somebody hear me speak at their regional company and they said, you need to speak at our national conference. Now it's just, social's huge. I mean, you mentioned mine a few times. I've got a team that now is, recording content, a couple of hours every month and we're cutting that down to bite size. I think bite size has a place, but we can't have long conversations in bite size, right?
Mhm.
We can't have this. There's a reason podcasts have taken off. I mean, you
Mhm.
from the news world, I'd love your opinion on, you know, where news has gone today versus, the value that podcasts bring, because
Yeah.
more people are getting their news, if you will, from their social media feeds than they are from the televisions. And so, for me, outside of the real estate world, it's just been this whole idea of where are the people? Where's the audience? What do they need or want that I can give them? In what size do they want? You know, do they want it in 30 seconds or 90 seconds, or do they want a 1 hour, podcast? And we're just kind of giving it everywhere, including, a book, which I'm going to go into the studio in less than 2 weeks and start recording the audiobook. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the voice of it. I try
Good.
not to, but they keep pushing me, so I'm going to do
Yeah,
it.
you kind of have to.
Yeah, it's like 15 hours for a 5 hour audiobook though. But the point is, like, books are sort of strange, right?
Mhm.
There's a whole generation of like my kids' age who love hardback books and don't want a Kindle. But then there's also, people who only get their books through audio and don't, read. So, the book world is not something that I have any experience in. I've learned a ton over the last 6 months, more than I probably wanted to learn how the industry works. But, the book itself, I guess the beauty of the book is that it's physical, right?
Mhm.
So an audiobook, you can't own it because we no longer get them in tape decks or DVDs like they used to come out, right? You'd go
Yeah.
to Barnes& and Noble and actually physically buy the audiobook and listen to it in your car. Now it's online. So we assume it lives there forever, but the reality is you can't find my Men's Fitness magazine online other than a few like sites where they scan magazines, because it never was online. It was a physical thing. And so, I think the physicality of having a book is something that I feel like my grandkids and like it'll be there if it's not on the shelf somewhere. So somebody has a copy of it, and the internet can't take that away. Um, so the book is. I have a second one in me. I don't know if I have the writing it wouldn't be the challenge at this point. Knowing what I know now, it's the promotion of the book.
And that so many people who write books, they don't think about what it takes, like the true effort that it can take to market a book. I used to do book satellite tours I worked at Fox News Channel, but we did those with HarperCollins authors. And, it's a lot of work. They would be sitting down for satellite interviews, hit after hit across the country, where now you're more focused on new media, right? You're focused on the podcasts and trying to get on someone's YouTube channel or showing up on social media. There's so many more ways that you need to try and connect with consumers. It's a big undertaking. But
Yeah.
with your book, you're on this journey of going from unknown nationally, internationally to more of a known person. That's the effort. That's the goal when you're putting out a book. It's like you need to sell it. You need to start becoming known outside of your niche, your industry. That journey's hard. When you think back to where it was organic and now it's essentially manufactured,
Mhm.
what have you experienced that might be useful to those listening who are thinking, I want to put out a book one day? Like, what do I need to do to really put myself out there outside of speaking?
Yeah. I think so. You see, there's a huge advantage, I think, from a publishing author standpoint, to already have a platform,
Mm-hmm.
right? The bigger your platform, you know, already, the more potential book pre-orders you're going to get. So in the book industry, it's a lot about how many books are pre-ordered that get fulfilled the week the book comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So all those orders on Amazon, all those corporate investments of companies that have said, I want to bring 100 books in for my employees, all those get fulfilled the week that the book launches, and books launch on a Tuesday. So again, if I had, 100,000 Instagram followers and I could get less than, say get 10%,
Yeah.
get 10,000 book sales. 10,000 book sales will, depending on any given week, could get you land on the New York Times bestseller list. So that makes a huge difference. I didn't, I mean, I had maybe when I was really speaking a lot, 12 years ago, Facebook was a thing. It was kind of coming around. So I don't know, 7 or 8,000 Facebook followers, which, doesn't sound like a ton compared to some media influences, but I had no Instagram at all. So I kind of just started it,
Hmm.
then a year ago, 6, 7 months ago. I don't know, we're pushing 3,000, but that's again,
But they're
percentage.
engaged.
Yeah, yeah. They're engaged and they're growing and it's growing. It's growing by 50, 100 people every week. I mean, I'm going to get all of yours, Jamie, after this, because they're all going to come over and hang out. But then it's content, right?
But
So you
that's
know
the
this
whole
whole,
strategy.
yeah, yeah. But you know the whole thing, you know more than anybody. It's content, right? So
Mhm.
and ironically, the quirkiest, weirder stuff gets more feed than anything else. You could say the most influential, positive, powerful words. And if nobody's hearing it, I guess it just sits there. So, back to Brittany's question, I guess I mean, I've been able to focus on the fact that if I can put myself in front of one person every day, life can be changed in trajectory.
Mhm.
We can take what they're going through and turning it into fuel to propel them in the positive way. Then I guess that's a win.
So, with your whole social media strategy, I wanted to make sure I got this in. So, one of what I do is I help people take their long form content and essentially turn it into content and use what they have experienced to become an expert as like a niche expert or a national expert. So you may have heard the term like newsjacking. I don't use that term because I truly believe that the one way in the door to growth is leaning into the news as often as you can as an expert.
Mhm.
And it could be interesting to see as you're going down this journey, if you see a horrific accident, you see a horrific experience, you take that headline, you weigh in, and you say, I've been there. And
Mhm.
you talk to that person. I feel like it could really help you build your brand and your authority within your niche outside of what you're doing. The
Mhm.
other thing that I'm seeing that's growing online is the episodic content. And you're in a really good position to kind of take people along this journey, where each day you could be like, here's what I'm doing. I'm on these podcasts and I'm trying to build my brand and I'm trying to put myself out there and get this book into more people's hands and kind of take people along. Because what I'm also finding in the author space is exposing people to the reality of it is endearing and appealing. So
Mhm.
there's two ways that when I see what you're doing, I feel like, okay, I could see that. Have you thought about either of those or have you tried them?
Yeah, well, on some, on the connection to something that happened,
Yeah.
um, it's been a much more personal one. I've
Mhm.
always been readily available to the Penn State Hershey Hospital. I've been fortunate to go to Walter Reed to talk to soldiers because I've got trauma from the waist down related from the car accident. Unfortunately, the most common people who have the same injuries as me are soldiers who were blown up
Mhm.
or people who end up in a rehab because a tree fell on their legs when they were taking a tree down. Young people. And so I've had a lot of intimate opportunities to
Mhm.
speak to those people
Yeah.
away from the camera. And most of those have come from those places reaching out, first of all, making myself available
Yeah.
to them saying, we have somebody who could probably come if you don't mind coming to this, physical therapist or in-house therapy and talk to this person, explain what you went through and where you are now. I think that's huge. Um, you know, I, getting in the door to the right places is always the challenge anyway, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Doors opening, are generally, in my experience so far, being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
There's a degree of luck, right? In every successful person, being at the right place at the right time. And the more I'm open to accepting that, God, the universe, somebody's going to put this in front of me and I just need to see it, um, has been a big shift in my mindset of seeing opportunity in places where in the past I wasn't looking or I wasn't watching and paying attention.
Hmm.
Being
Yeah.
on podcasts, having a conversation about my social media with you. Like I don't come on this podcast. We don't have these conversations. I'm sure we're going to have more conversations off camera later in our futures about what that looks like for both of us. And some of the most influential people in my life right now, I think influence my life are people that I have now met in either one of these types of situations, in a conference where they came up and talked to me, where I'm now just open to opportunity.
That's
And,
good.
and then, I think that everything's sort of a snowball effect, right?
Yeah.
Uh, health.
And it is a small snowball effect because I saw him speak on stage and now here we are. I want to interrupt this conversation one more time to let you know about Brand Builders. Brand Builders is a group that I'm using to redevelop my online personal brand and build out content that's really useful to you, the listener. I want to make sure that my years of experience in television and film and TV news helps you become a stronger thought leader and on camera personality in whatever area of the industry you're interested in pursuing. So, if you're someone who really wants to start cranking out content or turn a book into content, reach out to me. But I also want to let you know that if you don't know how to turn your long form content into frameworks, into courses, into a bigger brand, check out Brand Builders. There's a link in the description. And now back to my conversation with John. I wanted to make sure that we ended with one of your frameworks. If you want to give people a little teaser as to what they can get from the book.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's 8 of them. The one that I speak about the most, the one you probably heard me speak about, I always go back to it because it's so powerful. I think it's the single one thing that if you can accept it in your life, everything kind of opens itself up. And that is this the 7th pillar, and it's falling in love with the process. I've just found that, my experience working out with the special needs adults, just being around people who just love the process. I've been fortunate to speak to a bunch of Division III college athletes. For those who are not in the college athletic world, that's the lowest. Division I's your big Georgia team, Penn State. Division II is a sort of a step down. Division III is a lot of small private schools. These kids that are playing football at Division III school, they're going to graduate and they're not going to be professionals in most 1%. Okay. They've been committed to something, at least 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. They probably started their sport when they were little kids. They're soccer players, tennis players, golfers. They've committed to something, shown the discipline, been a teammate, right? Like it's a great skill set, but ultimately you will never run across a professional athlete who hates practice. Doesn't exist. If you don't love the grind of practice, the camaraderie, the team, all of it, you're never going to be elite at anything, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I am big and strong relative to, most people. It was never my goal as much as my goal was to just keep pushing my body harder to get better. I always tell people, muscle is the one thing you can't buy. It is the one. So, and I'll have kids, like I just spoke to 500 high schoolers. Kid raises, says, Mr. Ulsh, you can take steroids. I said, well, I'm glad that you don't understand how steroids work because I happen to know a kid plays on a football team. I'm like, steroids don't do anything unless you still work out.
Yeah.
But you can alter your skin, you can alter your fat, you can do lots of things. Muscles aren't. So there's, you can see, you can't cross any person anywhere who looks in shape, muscular, and think that they did anything other than work out. And so, you don't get that way because your goal is to look muscular because you won't stay that way. And so, this concept of falling in love with the process of literally moving the finish line constantly, that is where the real beauty is. That's real success. I mean, everybody who's ever been really successful grinded to get there. You hear people who win the lottery, right? Didn't win the lottery, millions of dollars. They almost always end up bankrupt. They didn't earn it. They didn't do the work. Everybody who's, all of a sudden becomes the new instant famous person on social or whatever. The reality is what they don't know is that the 10 years they grinded behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Trying to get there, right? And so I think the biggest takeaway that I want everybody to end up with when they start working with me, read the book and everything. We talk about everything from commitment to a written plan to the source of your problems, to deal with and how to handle a setback when it comes. But ultimately, what I want everyone to do is fall in love with the process of what they're doing. Because again, if you don't, the chances of success drop dramatically. We all know people who decided they had to get in better shape and they start dieting and exercising and they lose the weight and they get in better shape. A couple years later, it's back. Reason? Because they hated the whole entire process. It wasn't them, or they didn't find a way to love it, right? And so you just return back to the status quo. Real change is when the process is so beautiful and that you love doing it that you're disappointed you already did it today and you want to do it tomorrow. So like for me, writing became that. When I finally started to write again, I really, really enjoyed it to the point where like I could keep writing. Like but now I go sell and edit and do all this other stuff. But I can't wait to get back to writing. I don't know that I can wait to get back to going through editors and all the rest of the part of it. But I love the process of writing. I love going to the gym I go 6 days out of 7, not because just because I want to. Or like I want to go see those people at the gym. I want that feeling of that high of getting it. When I was running marathons, I've been fortunate enough to meet people who have, done 22 triathlons, full length, triathlons. Nobody sets out to do that, right? This guy's climbed, major mountain peaks around the world. Nobody sets out to do that. You run a 5K and you like it so much that you run a 10K and then you run a half marathon and then you run a marathon and that's not enough and you have to run more marathon. Like you don't start with the idea I'm going to go run a marathon. And I meet people all the time who said, I ran one. They probably, that was their goal. Most of the time it's somebody falls in love with it and now they can't help themselves. It's what they do.
Yeah.
It becomes part of their identity.
Yeah. I was a runner, and that's when in my 20s, I remember I ran until I was suddenly like dealing with sciatica, and it was like years of that. And I was told you're not allowed to run anymore. And I was like, no, I'm running. We're still running. When it becomes a part of you, it's hard to get rid of whatever identity you're dealing with. If you were to say in 30 seconds what your whole book is about, what would you say?
Taking setbacks and turning them into fuel. We were talking a little bit offline. Like I've always said, turning setbacks into success, but I think more importantly, it's taking your setbacks and turning them into fuel, because fuel propels, right? And so I think when people read the book, they'll understand the journey that I've been on. But I think more importantly, they'll have some tools to say, okay, how do I turn what I'm dealing with right now in the fuel to propel me?
Well, I appreciate those words. I feel like I'm turning things into fuel right now alongside you, which I see you doing. You are fueled up and ready online. And if anyone wants more information on John, follow him on social media. There'll be some links in the description. You can also grab his book from my Amazon storefront. I'll have a link to his book there. And thanks so much, John, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was great.